Hello everyone, Ogre27 Kane here today with a very special review of Outer Worlds for the Nintendo Switch. This is a special thanks to my good friend Joe. I've been meaning to get this up. I hope you really enjoy this. Let's do a real quick overview of what this game is and what you can expect. This game is an action-adventure semi-open world RPG given to us by, of all people, Obsidian. They previously made Fallout New Vegas, so if you're familiar with that game, then you'll be fairly familiar with this game and how it works. It even has a very, very similar sense of humor, if albeit even crazier. The sci-fi setting allows this game to be pretty crazy. It allows them to be pretty quirky with not only their sense of humor, but the weapons and other things, the worlds and areas that you explore. You're essentially exploring an entire solar system, so planets, asteroids, and even other ships. Although I absolutely love how often the setting changes, the load times between them are kind of ridiculous, especially when you see what they're able to achieve with much older games. All that aside, I'm happy they managed to fit this on the Switch. It's still a fun game and it deserves your time. So, let's hit the story now. The story sees your character on board a ship that took off from Earth a long time ago. Somehow, some accident occurred and you managed to get stranded out in space. This doctor that you're seeing on screen, Dr. Phineas Wells, finds your ship and manages to find a way to resuscitate you. He needs your help in trying to resuscitate and fix all of your other crew members. That is the main story arc to this game. Everything else you do is essentially a connection or a tie-in to this story. There are a lot of really cool and unique side stories and side quests, and the game does give you a lot of backstory about each and every one of your characters and crew members. But ultimately it all comes back to this, trying to find a way to save your lost crew members. The story itself doesn't take too long, probably about 10 to 15 hours to complete on its own. If you do all of the other side quests and all of the other missions and everything else, the game can last you upwards of 30 to 40 hours. If you download the DLCs, then the game can get you a little bit more, maybe 50-60 hours. It does have a level cap, and the worlds aren't terribly large to explore, so it's not going to be like Skyrim or Fallout where you're going to sink a lot of time into just doing random things. Most of these smaller quests will end fairly quick. Let's get to gameplay now. The general gameplay loop in this game is very similar to those said games. You generally want to go out, explore the town, meet people, get quests, find new armor, new weapons, and then go out and explore the world. The game has a sort of level system to where a lot of the characters and enemies that you're fighting have parity, but once you get to a certain point, that kind of ends. You kind of just take control and destroy everything. Because the sandboxes that you're exploring are not too big, you don't have to worry too much about stumbling into the wrong areas. Although the story is decent in its own right, it's not the addiction to this game. The addiction to this game is the same one that you'll find in those other games. It's going out, it's exploring, it's looting, it's pillaging, it's trying to max out stuff and find ridiculous glitches that'll help you. The disappointing thing is because of this parity system, you can't really find anything that's terribly unique until the end of the game, or you get certain quests. There are some really cool weapons in this game, and they allow you to do some pretty crazy things, but all of these are tied to things that require you to get to them. They're not necessarily just things you can stumble on like you can in Fallout. Now that's just a minor gripe about the gameplay. The rest of this is done really, really well. And all of the towns that you visit are very vibrant and full of people, and all of the areas that you explore have different creature types and different little nooks and crannies, so it really makes it worth exploring. I feel like Obsidian did a good job creating these worlds, and they are definitely fun to explore. Next up, controls. The sensitivity options and inversion options make this a pretty good first-person shooter. You have the ability to change buttons as well and map it to what you need. If you're familiar with a lot of Bethesda's games, then you'll be familiar with how the controls work in this. They spared no expense to offer you a lot of different options. I honestly didn't have to change anything and everything worked fairly well for me. But you might be different, you might see it a little differently. I recommend playing with all of the different options and seeing what works best for you. One thing that I do notice though is that the controls are almost paced to the speed and ability of the system itself. The Nintendo Switch can't handle a lot, and so the controls kind of chug with the game when it happens. The good news is, it doesn't really throw you off in your targeting or aiming of a lot of the monsters. And if that's too much for you, there are also auto assist options as well. Auto aiming can help a lot of first timers and beginners, and there's nothing wrong with using it, especially if you're just trying to enjoy an RPG. The game has a similar VATS type system to other Fallout games, which even allows you to slow it down more. So there are ways to make it quite user friendly, and you can even lower the difficulty if the characters are seen too strong. I'm only on normal difficulty, and I never really had a problem with the game. Combat's up next. Well, as you can see from what's on screen here, it's a first-person shooter. It's a little slower than something like you'd see with Call of Duty, but it definitely works well for what the game's trying. I never really had any problems with the way the game operated or anything like that. I'm very used to the Fallout series, and this game made me feel right at home. The game has tons of different options as far as melee or long-range sniper rifles, machine guns, grenade launchers, you name it. The game gives you lots of options and wants you to have fun with everything you're blowing up. There are also some pretty unique weapons that have some crazy effects. I'll let you explore and try to find them, but at the end of this video I show a couple of them off. I love the way that these companies like Obsidian and Bethesda have managed to merge perfectly the RPG and first-person shooter genre. Although I played a lot of the Borderlands games, they never were quite had the same effect to me that Fallout did. So, until I get my next Fallout, this is gonna have to work. The only other thing I really want to mention about combat is the AI. Your AI on your team actually functions fairly well and does a decent job keeping up with you. I didn't really have to worry all too much about them. Time for the elephant in the room. Let's talk graphics and animation. This game is definitely an impossible port on the Switch. As you can see, there's tons of pop-in, lots of frame rate drops, and all kinds of resolution issues. All that being said though, I'm still impressed they managed to get this game on the Switch. I know this game looks absolutely fantastic on the Xbox Series, but considering what the Switch can do, it's still impressive in its own right. The only thing that I feel they got kind of wrong is, for the file size, they should have allowed a lot more optimization. Hopefully we'll get more patches, but compared to what it started at, it's in a much better state now. Expect to have about 12 to 15 gigabytes in downloads and patches on top of the cartridge. The game's kind of interesting. When you're in an area, like a city like this, the frame rate will drop dramatically. When you're out in the world and there's a lot less creatures and movement going on, the game will dramatically increase. The dynamic resolution is also kind of weird. One minute the game will look really sharp, and then the next minute the game looks absolutely blurry. This is in no way, shape, or form as bad as something as Ark was, but it is something that does show the differences between the new consoles and the Nintendo Switch itself. I sure hope new hardware can cure this. Let's do the conclusion now. Well, it would be hard to recommend this game at a full $60 price point, but luckily it's not. This game sees all kinds of sales online, digitally, and physically. I think you can pick it up right now for around $20. Yes, it's going to require some space and a possible SD card, but if you already have that, then it's going to be worth your $20. You can't go wrong with it. If you need to get a good RPG, first-person shooter, or that old-school Fallout kind of fix, you can't do any better on the Nintendo Switch. This game is definitely one of a kind, and I think everybody should at least play it and check it out, if nothing else just to see what the Nintendo Switch is actually capable of doing. So with all that being said, yes, this game is an absolute must-buy. I enjoyed it a lot. I think you would too if you really enjoy any of those other games I mentioned in this. They really worked hard, and Obsidian's a great studio. Well, I personally really enjoy Obsidian games, and this is definitely some of their finer work. I recommend this game highly. Well, thank you for watching today's video. I upload every single Monday. This video was a blast to make. Please like and subscribe, and have yourself a great rest of your day. This is Ogre 27 Kane signing out.